Let's talk about some of the year-to-date gains in FANG, particularly Netflix among them, Facebook, Apple. Did you see this coming even when things were looking ridiculously pessimistic in December?
Well, Carl, I don't pretend to have a crystal ball, but if I had known how good the earnings were going to be, I could have predicted that off of those lows we were going to get a great bounce because, you know, everybody put up great fourth quarter numbers. And, you know, even the things people complained about were, realistically speaking, you know, way better than the stock prices were reflecting 2 months ago. So, you know, here we are.
Roger, to that point, back in the fall when we had you on the show, you had said that you had become more cautious about the markets and that you were buying treasuries at the time. Has your sentiment shifted? Well,
to be clear, I'm out on a book tour now trying to sell Zucked, so I'm not really paying quite as close attention day to day to buying opportunities as I would otherwise, Morgan. But, you know, what you're looking at here, and I think this is really true, is that the sentiment in the market reflects stock market things. I don't think we're looking at the broader issues of, you know, if something goes wrong in our trade relationships with China from here, that's obviously going to be a huge issue for tech. And I think people are kind of hoping and praying there's a soft landing there, and I am as well. But, you know, I don't have a special perspective there.
Hey, Roger, we talk a lot about FANG, but as I look year to date at some of the stocks that have gone up the most, some smaller tech stocks, even some that have fared poorly lately, GoPro is up more than 40%, Box is up 45%, Stitch Fix 48%. These are stocks that got clobbered at the end of the year. Roku is up nearly 80% year to date. What is it about sentiment around maybe some of these edge case, smaller bets you think might have turned around?
Yeah, John, I think it's as simple as these are things with much smaller floats. So it's you know, easier at the margin for incremental buying or incremental selling to move the stock a long, long way. And, you know, when companies go public, only a small fraction of the shares are going to trade. And that creates a setup where, you know, when sentiment goes bad, you get murdered. But when sentiment's good, it doesn't take that many incremental buyers to move the stock a long way. And you know, if you think about a company like Roku, you know, there's a situation there where you've got a management team that's built a company over a long period of time, has proven the naysayers wrong consistently. And if people stop worrying about the macro, then, you know, companies like Roku feel like a buying opportunity, not a selling opportunity.
Yeah, speaking of all these ideas of going public, Roger, I wonder if we get Uber, Lyft, Postmates, et cetera, at any point this year, how do you think they get received? Do they come in a compressed window? And do you think it robs other U.S. equities of some oxygen?
I don't see it robbing other U.S. equities of oxygen. I think that the issue for all these guys is really, really simple, which is the private market has built up massive expectations, and the public market gets to make its own choice on how to value them. And if you think about the most recent quarter, we have some numbers on what Uber did. And to me, you know, Uber is slowly but surely closing the gap and, you know, getting closer to something that looks like a viable business. But is it worth $100 billion? I mean, the public market's going to get to make a choice on that. And I would, you know, if it decides on day one it's worth that, I wouldn't count on it holding that point of view forever. You know, the markets get to look at these things, and IPOs, as you know, are sold, not bought, right? They dress them up nice and pretty and bring them out, and they look fantastic. And then after a while, you get to look at the comparisons, you realize, oh, they really aren't earning that much money. And, you know, to me, the outlook for some of those really big unicorns just isn't as good as either the FANG stocks or some of the smaller ones that are in the market. And I think there are going to be other IPOs across the year that are going to be even more interesting than the big ones.
Interesting. We're going to definitely find out how the public market treats some of those names. Roger, let's dive a bit into Facebook, the social network being labeled as, quote, digital gangsters in this report out of the UK Parliament, saying the company violated both privacy and competition laws and should be regulated immediately. Echoes, obviously, what you argue to some degree in your book. And yet, as you pointed out a few moments ago, I mean, we're just not seeing the user engagement reflected. Why?
Well, I mean, to be clear, at Facebook, the numbers that you're seeing are based on them loading up newsfeed with a lot more ads than they used to put in there. I think in my case, I'm up to about one ad every fifth or sixth post. And I think that's roughly twice as many ads as I would have seen a year ago. And according to Nielsen, the year-over-year engagement in terms of minutes of use per user, I think it's down something like 20%. I forget the exact number, but it's down materially. And none of those things are good things. I mean, Facebook still has the best advertising platform that money can buy. And, so I don't expect the numbers to melt down. But who wants to be labeled a digital gangster? I mean, that's not going to be good in the long run. Even though the UK thing is not binding, it's not a good sign. And I think the sentiment on these guys is that they have been out of control. They've taken advantage of the lack of rules relative to collection of data, relative to exploitation of it. And they've so far been unwilling to make the substantive changes. To me, Carl, the questions that really need to be asked are really basic ones, like why is it legitimate for credit card processors to sell your credit card transaction data? Why is it legitimate for cellular carriers to sell geolocation data? Why is it
Roger,
Go ahead.
Is the heat off? Though it seems like months ago there was so much more pressure. There was an expectation that Zuckerberg was going to show up in legislative halls around the world and explain himself. It seems that tech is either emboldened on the one hand, if you're in their corner, tone deaf on the other, if you're against them, and Facebook, has continued along its way, saying that they're open to regulation. Bring it.
Hey, John, I think both of those statements can be true at the same time, right? I also think the wheels of justice turn, unfortunately, very, very slowly on this. And in my mind, what matters is that there is a steady drumbeat that's building, that we just need to have the data economy work differently. It needs to be more balanced, that the interests of the consumer needs to be met. And the point I want to emphasize, this is not about Facebook alone. Facebook had the really egregious issues with Cambridge Analytica that, have caught so much attention in the United Kingdom and here in the US. But this is really about a whole economy of companies that includes Google, it includes the credit card processors, it includes the cellular companies, people who sell data who do not, if you will, respect the fact that the people whose data is in question should have not only control of what happens to it, but in fact may have rights of privacy that preclude the sale of the data in the first place. And to me, that's the conversation that needs to happen now. And if we look forward and think about things like smart devices with Alexa or Google Home or AI, those issues become a lot more important. And Facebook actually becomes a much smaller part of that conversation because they don't play in those categories the same way that they play in social.
Roger, in light of all of these points and key questions you're raising, Facebook stock is up 24% just since the start of this year. Are you surprised?
Well, like I said, I think they had just a knockout fourth quarter, and the stock had been beaten down. So to me, there's just more buyers than sellers. It's not an expensive stock on the numbers. And if you believe that there isn't going to be any kind of regulatory pressure on the company, nothing, the UK thing is just talk, right? It's not actual change. If that's the worst of it, then the stock is absolutely priced properly and, may even still be a value here. But if you believe that what the UK is saying is going to lead to changes somewhere, as we saw in Germany a couple weeks ago, where they've attacked the, Facebook's practices relative to tracking people and profiling people, I actually believe that we're going to see more regulation, but I'm just one voice. We'll see.